Mr. Begley, members of the board, we do have several items for board discussion this evening. The first item is Board of Education presentations for the 2022-2023 school year. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Begley.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Smith. So each year, Mr. Smith and his staff do a wonderful job of making presentations to us on things that they feel are important. Tonight is a chance for us to tell them what we feel might be important for some future presentations during work sessions. So I guess I will just open it up for general discussion. Please share some ideas you may have. Mrs. Gentry Fletcher will write them down, and then with these three dots, we will go to the board and pick our three favorites, and that will create the order that we use to pick our presentation topics. How many will we eventually do?
We usually don't put a number on it. Throughout the year, we have spotlights on individual schools. We have certain presentations that take place every year. So we have certain presentations that we as a team have decided, hey, we need to do this presentation this year. So we just, I just take the top ones. Usually, honestly, I just look at the dots.
Yeah.
And if it's evident that there's interest there, then I will find a spot for it on the calendar.
Right, great, thank you. Okay, who would like to open us up with some thoughts?
I would like to see a little bit of an expansion, I guess. We do cover the ACT, and that's a very important topic, and we talk about the program that we have through Torch Prep. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that we could have maybe someone from Torch Prep come and actually give a deep dive into what they do and some of their... Okay, sorry. Like if we could possibly have somebody from Torch Prep come out and really give some more information about it, just bring a little bit more attention to it. We've definitely, been covering it, and I'm really happy to see that. I'm just wondering if having like a Torch Prep open house might be something that drives even more kids to it.
Yeah, we can list that as an item, and I'm sure I can work with Mrs. Aug and figure something out. Yeah, I think that's a possibility.
Thank you.
Do we want to kind of go and, do you have an idea now?
Well, sort of along the same lines, and I think I may have mentioned this last year, not just with like the ACT, but with the other standardized tests that our students take. What are some things that parents can be doing at home to help prepare them for test time? Other than, like make sure they get enough sleep and have a good breakfast or whatever. What are some things they can do at different grade, at different like the elementary level versus high school versus junior high or whatever, to help kids get prepared for those tests?
I know we do our very best at this, but it's certainly something Mrs. Shorter and I have talked about as well. Along those same lines, what's kind of the timeline for parents to keep them in front of 11th grade ACT prep and, all those sort of things. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm curious as to whether or not Torch Prep is only open to our juniors and seniors, or is it open to our sophomores as well?
It's something
That would be a
we've
type
talked
of
about. We're just
question.
not quite there yet, but yeah,
Right.
that's something we've talked about, and I think there's room for further discussion on that. Yeah. Ms. Birding, do you have anything?
I know that we spotlight all of our schools, and all of our schools are very unique and do great things. One of the ones I'm probably most ignorant about, I would say, is the academy. I'd love to hear about the academy and like what the programs that they do and what kind of students would be beneficial for them to bring in, and like to know what, as a parent, how that would benefit my child.
Yes, thank you. I like that. I had it on my list as well. We've started a middle school academy, so some updates on how that is going could certainly be part of that presentation as well. So then, because that's yours, mine would be, and Scott gave me a list as well. So this was actually on his list as well as my list. and it's English language learners, right? So a presentation as to the process and to the resources needed when we have a child come into the district and English is a second language or really no language for them, right? And they're going to have to learn it, and we're going to have to teach it to them before they can be effective students, and the challenges that that creates, what that looks like at the second grade level versus what that might look like if they come into our schools as an 8th grader or a 9th grader, and the challenges that creates.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Back to you, if you have any others.
You know, I think one of the things that we've always tried to do is to essentially have like an update on our newer programs. And I am curious about what's happening with our math programs that were pilots. I think we had 2 math pilots from the Ohio Education Department. It was 2 math class, those
Mathematical
pilots.
modeling and reasoning.
Yeah, I'd love to see how those things are going, or to get some more information about our newer classes that have been introduced. It doesn't just have to be the math program, but some of our newer classes that we have, or offerings, you know, just to see how we're doing there.
Great, thank you.
I had one, and it just gone that quick.
That's all right.
Oh, you know, something that I think we've covered before, and I wouldn't mind covering again, is talking about open enrollment. Because we got a lot of valuable information, and I think it was like a year and a half
Probably been
ago.
a little bit ago.
And I still hear a lot of assumptions from the public, like, well, if it weren't for open enrollment, you know, the scores would be higher. And I have to go, no, that's not the case. So I would appreciate if we had, you know, an update on that again.
Yes, I think that's a good idea, and that there's certainly a stigma attached to open enrollment, and the data is fairly conclusive. First of all, it's a very small percentage of the entire student body, and then those that create behavioral issues or that have poor results is an even smaller percentage when compared to the entire student body. But best to have you share those details.
Absolutely.
I also had open enrollment, so I'm glad that Jerry took it, so I can cover one of my many other ones that I have. I'd be interested in hearing about the health clinic and who's eligible to go there, how it's benefiting our staff and our community and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great point in that, you know, the health clinic opened and we spent a lot of time focused on that and tracking results and making sure that it was viable, and then we added transportation and a number of concerns, and it really has kind of, to a certain degree, fallen off our radar. I'm confident that it's probably very viable and doing great things, so let's hear about it.
I agree with that. I know I sent an article to the board this week, and it was because our district was featured in an article. It was about transportation, about our needs. So I guess I would want to know or be interested in seeing whether or not we could have a transportation update. Just, you know, where we are, what is our plan for trying to address any of those deficits, because I know all districts are going through the same thing. And since the state has not moved forward with lowering the age for those who would qualify for CDL testing, you know, what are we going to do? Just curious about that, because that's something that's going to go on probably all year long. So it would be nice to have some kind of dialogue about it, and here's some information about what they're doing, what their plans are. How are we moving forward?
Yeah, Scott had that on his list as well. I mentioned to you earlier that Butler Tech's been a huge proponent of, they have a CDL program and a huge proponent of trying to lower the age to 18 to obviously encompass a lot more drivers. There's some pushback about that, but, you know, wherever that falls, I don't know, but it's certainly a need for the trucking industry, and it's certainly a need within the schools. My next one, I think it's probably time to have some discussion about the future of a tax levy. Mrs. Lane has done a 5-year forecast, which has us operating at a deficit at some point during that forecast. And so it really needs to be on the radar. When do we, are we going to go before the public? When do we do that? What does it look like? What might we need? It's time to have a discussion, and I think we have it, like everything, in an open public forum like this, so the public knows where we're at and what we're thinking.
Since you were talking about transportation, one thing that I've always wondered is how the school bus routes are created. And I get a lot of questions about that, like, you know, why are they picking up kids from over here and then they're coming and picking up my kids that are, you know, 2 miles away? And I don't know the answers. So I think it would be interesting to learn how that.
You added it to the transportation. And that's great. We had a presentation, and I remember it because it's so unbelievably complicated.
I can't even imagine
And it's a
how
huge
done.
computer system, and, yeah, really neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? You had more?
I do. I think that something would be interesting to hear about is athletic facilities. I know that we've done a lot of updates and a lot of like switching out equipment for a lot of our teams and stuff. So hearing about all the stuff that we have done and what stuff still needs to be done, I think would be interesting.
You have another one? Please.
Yeah, I think in light of everything that's been happening in terms of safety, I think it's time for a safety summit where parents can basically get an update on, you know, what we have in place as far as our, the number of SROs, you know, things that we are doing that have increased safety, how we plan to utilize HB 99 in our district, you know, how is that going to impact us?
Well, just off the top of my head, do you think, and maybe I'm asking Mr. Smith this as well, we've always had that sort of mental health series open to the public at the freshman building, and maybe that could be the focus of one of those as opposed to just a school board meeting where we hope people watch as opposed to we invite them to it. Of course, as always, you can't share everything you do, but there are a lot of things we can share to create a little sense of comfort as best we can in these difficult times. So maybe that's a forum. Let's have, yeah,
We can go either direction.
right, okay.
I feel like if we have a board presentation and post it online, more people may watch it than they would if we had an event
Really,
versus them showing up.
really,
It's really, really hard to
it is hard.
get people there, but they will take the time to go watch it. But we can go either direction. We're flexible.
Anything else? We got a pretty good list. It's unfortunately too big to do them all, right? So we're going to need to vote. So now it's just a mad dash up there to place your 3 dots. Let's go for it.
This is tough.
I know, it's hard.
Is it biased if I just vote for my own?
No, I think I've done it in the past. So.
You did literally
I did, I couldn't decide, so.
Tiebreaker.
The good news is that each year, some of those topics that don't get any dots make it into a presentation anyway, so I already know of a few that will be easy to incorporate. So the Academy Spotlight, for example, only has one dot, but we can rotate the Academy into the Spotlight presentations this year. Just and several of the other ones I know that we can fit in.
Well, they were all excellent ideas. So I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah, very good. Yeah.
we can-
Combined there. I really think that could be, yeah, I think those two.
Torch prep and what parents can do could be, is
Oh,
one,
yeah,
is what
right.
you're saying,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And we, for example, we might just combine, those into that, each October. It's one of Mrs. Aug's favorite presentations, where we talk about, state report card and torch prep and ACT, and we can probably just make it a supersized presentation, just like my microphone just got supersized. So, yeah, it'll be great. Those are some great ideas, so,
Okay,
very nice.
yeah, I think we gave you some direction.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, our next item for board discussion, emergency closing plan for delivering instruction via online lessons. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Aug, who actually will be covering our next item as well, EL tutor needs for the 22-23 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Bagley, members of the board, my first item tonight is the emergency closing plan for delivering instruction via online lessons. You might remember that last year the board approved a policy that would allow us to make up 3 calamity days via online instruction. And this would only happen after we use the 8 days already accounted for in the calendar. So as long as we have those 3 days built into our calendar, which we do for the upcoming school year, we will need to have a plan in place for delivering online instruction during those 3 days. So the plan is in your board packet, and it follows the guidelines provided to us by OSBA. And it includes guidance for things such as, where lessons need to be posted, the timeline for how long students have to complete the lessons, and what accommodations can be made for students who might not have a computer at home. We actually did not need to make any changes to our plan from last year to this year. We've already secured written consent from FCTA. That was part of the regulation or the policy. So it is ready for approval, which I will be asking for tonight because it needs to be approved by August 1st each year. That's my first item. Any questions?
Do we need a written copy, or is it just as simple as what you described? Was there anything to really see other than what you're saying?
It's one of your documents.
It's one of the documents in the board.
Okay,
packet.
okay, sure,
I
sure.
think it's the PDF, maybe. No, it's not the PDF. The PDF is the regulation. It's a Word document.
Word document. Okay, great, I'm sorry, please, go ahead.
So my other item for board discussion tonight is about the number of English learner tutors we anticipate needing for the upcoming school year. It is our goal to update you prior to the start of the year and again in the middle of the school year related to any hiring needs. And this is an attempt to streamline our processes, so I'm not coming to you several times a year. And, doing it at this point in the year also allows us to, get some quality candidates into those positions. Now, if a need would arise, after we meet tonight, I, of course, will send you an email to alert you to that need. So to determine the amount of staffing, we use the 2018 board-approved staffing ratios as a guideline for making recommendations, and those ratios are included at the bottom of the handout that you have in your board packet. So at this time, our numbers indicate that we need to add the equivalent of 2 full-time positions for the first half of the school year, bringing our total tutor numbers from 46 to 48. And this anticipated need is based on the total potential EL students. You can see that east, north, south, and west will remain the same. We will decrease tutor numbers at Central and at Creekside. And then we need to add a half-time tutor at Compass, 2 at Crossroads, 1 at the freshman school, and half at the high school. So there is a chance that we might have additional needs. It's not August yet, and we know that registration really starts hopping in August. Just since Monday, we've had 17 additional potential EL students. No, that's across the district. But just to illustrate. Wow. I know. And not all of those students will qualify for services, but a very high percentage of them will. So, like I said, you might be seeing an email from me. You know, we reran the numbers even today to see if it changed anything. It didn't change anything with the numbers that I shared with you earlier this week. But again, we just have to keep in the back of our mind that there's the potential for those numbers to grow to the point that we might have to add additional tutors. And that concludes this item for board discussion. Do you have any questions for me about that?
You said it depends on whether or not the kids qualify for the services. Can you kind of give us, I guess, a baseline on what those qualifications are? I actually don't know what those qualifications are. I'm sorry. What is?
So that's something we can include in our EL presentation later this year. I know that's already on the agenda for us to do that, but the students take something called the OELPS. It's a screener that they're given. It's an ODE-created screener, and it's pretty difficult. I mean, when I say most kids qualify, probably at least 80 to 90% will qualify for services. It's very unusual. We have very few students who do not qualify, especially in the elementary grades.
So it's not in line with the standards basically for our state testing and for ELA. I mean,
No, this is screening for language acquisition.
so it's much more difficult than the. Okay.
My question is, how do we get these projections? How do we know or assume what the general idea of how many kids we're getting? Is that just based off of last year's numbers? Is it based off of, like, growth of Fairfield and families moving? 'Cause I mean, you just said we had 17 new ones.
Right, so the first column here, which is the current identified, so those are the ones that we know of because they are enrolled in the district and we served them last year. The potential ones are new registrations. And so I have someone in my department who monitors registration numbers, and there's a component within the registration process that will alert Megan, my staff member, to the fact that that student would need to be screened as a potential EL student.
So just to be clear, Mrs. Aug, so that potential number doesn't necessarily, you're not increasing that number because you think in the next 2 weeks, we may get 20 new students. So that's an important point. That's based on current numbers.
Right.
And in the past, usually the numbers that we have right now just continue to go up prior to the start of the year, as an FYI.
Yeah, and it is hard. I don't, we don't want to wait until registration, until the first day of school or after school starts to bring you these numbers. So we have to make our best guess. So I sit down, with my English learner specialist and with our administrative assistant who monitors all of these numbers, and we go through and we do all, apply all of the ratios, and we say, okay, this is their current status, and we believe that they're going to need, this many students. And it's a little bit different for, elementary. You have to have 50 additional students to get an additional tutor. So we're looking at who's close and who's not, and making the best decisions on the numbers that we have, so. Thank you.
All right. Our next item for board discussion is the need to hire an additional intervention specialist at Central Elementary. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Hauer.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Begley, members of the board, I wanted to make you aware that due to some new student enrollments at Central Elementary, the number of students on IEPs, meaning students requiring special education services, have increased to the point of us needing to hire an additional intervention specialist going into this school year. This is more of just an FYI, as this is a state mandate that an intervention specialist shall not serve more than 16 children. And we are at the point at Central where our current numbers there require us to hire this additional person to start the school year. And again, I just wanted to make you aware of it and give you an opportunity to ask any questions you may have.
Fairly straightforward, right?
Yep, cut and dry, pretty much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms.